do. Youth Compass live streaming. We need a theme song. Youth Compass live streaming. We really should have a theme song. Waiting for people to join. Do do do. Oh look, people have come on board. Hello, Youth Compass live streaming. I'm just gonna sing for a little while because we need a little while for everyone to check in. So this is my new Youth Compass streaming theme song. Youth Compass streaming theme song. Do do do. Oh hi people. Oh hi Jamie. Hi Youth Compass Dusseldorf. Hi. Hi poor family. Hi Luke. Oh I love when little hearts fly up. That makes me so happy. Oh look, it's my buddy Ahmed. Hi. How you doing, everybody? Welcome aboard. Thanks for tuning in. Right one. Well, I think I know what you're saying, and we'll go right on. Yes. How's everybody been? Has it been a good week or so since we last got to chat? Very excited to get to chat again. We're gonna run over. Again, we've got a few seconds while everybody tunes in. So just to review, I should have sound checked the laughter first, but I didn't. So we're gonna sound check the laughter. Laughter's overwhelming. Gosh. No, but it's still there. Okay, good. So I've still got my laugh track, so everything is gonna be fine. I'm easily amused, so we're doing okay. Yay! I should. Thank you. I should be selling laugh track. I really should. Especially since it's just my voice over and over and over. Although I am getting submissions from other people, so soon I will have a much, much bigger, wider laugh track with more than just me. I actually thought about maybe doing my own voice again, but then I could change the pitch, and so I could have super high laughter and super low laughter. Although, just playing with it, I never actually recorded it, but just playing with it was incredibly amusing. Super low laughter is actually really terrifying if someone's like so I decided not to do that. That would change the whole theme and tempo of this live stream if it were just full of evil. Okay, that might be amusing. We might try it. Let's not kid ourselves. Welcome aboard. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see. We'll go ahead and it's now to 2. Good. We'll go ahead and get started a little bit, shall we? We shall. So today, dear friends, I've gathered you here virtually, of course, to talk about fear and the future. Yes, because we don't talk about fear enough. We all experience it, but we don't really get to talk about it as much in a constructive way as I think we should. So, welcome aboard. Gosh, I love how everyone waves when you come. That's so very polite. I think we should keep this up once quarantine and everything is over. I realize when you come into a room, we do say hi. Not enough people wave though. Every time I walk into a room now, I'm going to be like, because people get excited when you wave at them. We should wave at more people. And it doesn't spread germs. Not that saying hi does, unless you say hi. And if you do that, you should stop immediately. That's what causes germs to spread, and that's no good. That went in a weird direction. So, fear. Yeah, fear of spreading germs. That's a good fear. Fear of running out of tea, also a fear. And so what do we do with fear? That's what we're going to chat about today. I have some thoughts on fear, and I think now is a particularly good time to talk about it because the pandemic has definitely upended a lot. It's as if the pandemic took all of our stability and all of the things that we thought we knew and were stable and could hold on to, and then put us in a car driving really fast and just flung them out the window, and all the stability and all the things that we thought we could trust in and thought we had control in went flying out the window. And that's really, really a very scary thing because we like stability. We like to have a sense of certainty that keeps us calm. An example that I heard once that I really, really like was chairs. Chairs demonstrate how much we love stability. Very few people, when they go to sit down, will check their chair for structural integrity. Most people are just like, oh, chair, fantastic, I'll sit. In fact, if you saw someone who before they took a seat went and checked for structural integrity and looked around and everything, you'd be like, what happened to you? What chair hurt you so bad that you can't trust them? But in some ways, that's kind of what the coronavirus has done. Loads of things that we thought we could believe in, that we thought were stable, suddenly aren't. For me, it's air travel. I always thought I would have the ability to get on a plane and go fly wherever I want to fly. I do not. and it's really, really scary. Now we're all checking chairs. That's how scared we are. We're due for a laugh track. Let's pick a 9-second one, shall we? It's just refreshing every now and then. Let's not kid ourselves. We're all terrified of our chairs now. Okay, maybe not our chairs, but definitely of things that we were never worried about before. And I have a thought on fear. I think that, first of all, it's a natural response to when things feel out of control. Fear is a natural response when we lose things that we used to be able to trust. A lot of people are struggling with anxiety now, and this is making it even worse. In fact, I know, getting to read what people feel anxious about. When we don't have control, we feel anxious. When we don't think we can trust things, we feel anxious. And anxious really is just a very close cousin of fear. And I think the way we need to think about fear is that fear is something that rushes in to fill a void. In fact, if you'll picture with me, it's like we're all running around with a container, and in this container, it could be like a cup, okay? We're running around with a container, and in this container is stability, is certainty, is all the things that make us feel calm and okay. And I think that what fear is when those things fling out. If I were to fling this, I'm not going to fling this tea, but if I were to fling this tea out, fear is what rushes in to fill the void. Basically, we're going to have something in this cup. It can't be empty. That defies the laws of emotion or something. And so when certainty and stability go flying out, fear is like, oh, a void, you say, and it goes rushing in. Fear is really something that just goes and fills a void. And I think because of that, one of the best ways that we can combat fear is actually to try to fill that void with other things. I think that if we allow a void, fear is going to jump in. When stability and control and certainty go flying out, fear is like, haha, opportunity, and it comes in. And so the best way, I think, to combat fear is actually to try to fill it with something else. I'm going to give you a quote by one of my favorite authors, Brennan Manning. And Brennan Manning says this: "Fear is useless. What is needed is trust. Don't live in fear, little flock. Stop worrying. Cheer up. Be brave. Take courage. Have confidence in Jesus. He has conquered the world." I like that because that is a really succinct way to explain to us what we really should be filling the void left by when we feel out of control, by when we can no longer trust things. And again, in the world right now, we're feeling that a lot. The Bible has an awful lot to say about this. Philippians 4:6-7 says it really well. "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." God doesn't want fear to fill the void. I think God knows very well that we're going to have moments where everything we were carrying around in our cup, all of our certainty, all of our stability, all of our tea, when all of that runs away, God doesn't want fear to fill the void. In fact, the phrase "fear not" is used in the Bible about 80 times. It's said repeatedly. A lot of times I think that God actually uses these times in our lives when he wants us to fill our cup with something better. When maybe what we put our trust in is not as stable as we think. When we think we're in control, we're really never as in control as we think we are. And so God says, don't fill your cup with those. Those are going to fall out and spill easily. And don't let fear rush in and fill that void. Instead of fill it with something else. Fill it with trust in me. I want to look at a story from my own life because I like telling stories. So I want to look at a story of my own life. And as we go through it, I want you to think of opportunities in the story where fear could have rushed in and filled the void. Sometimes it does, sometimes other things. So very quick story. I was living in Turkey at the time. Turkey's a lovely place to live. It has fantastic food. And while I was living in Turkey, I decided that I wanted to go exploring. And this is the story of when I was kidnapped. It was a very minor kidnapping, but I was kidnapped. And I was in Turkey and wanted to go exploring. So I got my friend Walter, who normally comes along with a lot of my diabolical plans because, Walter is just easy to go along with things. And so I decided that I wanted to go and see some abandoned monasteries that were in Armenia. And they're thousands of years old. Monasteries back from pre-historical time. Well, not quite that old. Monasteries back from like just after Christ walked the earth. So thousands of years old monasteries. National Geographic can get there, so I should be able to get there. So we went on this long, arduous trip. We had to rent a car, we had to abandon a rental car, we rode a train, we got on a dolmush, we may have kind of, sort of, slightly bribed our way through a border. All kinds of things happened. And we finally get to the town where these monasteries are. But these monasteries are up on the top of a mountain. Walter and I don't speak any Armenian, and so we're walking around the town. Not a lot of tourists in this town, by the way. Teeny tiny town. It has a copper mine. That is this town's whole claim to fame. So we get there. There's no tourists. We are walking around looking like a bunch of crazy people because it's just a bunch of locals and us, and we can't find anyone to speak our language. Finally, we really did find someone who spoke French. That was helpful. And I speak French very badly. I speak French only in the present tense because I can't handle other passé composé and other tenses. I live in the now in French. And so we said to this person, you know, I said badly, I am to be wanting to go to the monasteries on top of the mountains. And they said, oh, we'll need a car. And so they wrote, I had a piece of paper and a pen, and they wrote, please drive us to the monasteries in Armenian. And then I just ran around town showing this piece of paper to people. Most people just ran off because two freaky people were running around shoving a piece of paper in their face. And then finally, around in a dark alley, admittedly, there was a dodgy looking guy leaning on a car. And when I showed the sign to him, and he had a giant cigarette with like 4 inches of ash off the end of it, and I showed this sign to him, and he went, and I was like, well, that seems positive. And Walter was nervous, and he said, we're not getting in the car with that guy. I said, we are getting in the car with that guy. He's the only guy who said yes so far. And Walter said, I really don't think we should. And I said, well, we are. So we did. We got in the car, and this crazy man drove us up to the top of the mountain. And we did. We got to see the monasteries. It was fantastic. I have pictures that I can show you at some point. It was amazing. It was historical. We found a priest who sang to us. It was phenomenal. I was National Geographic. And then it was time to go. And to go was important because we lived on a military base in Turkey, and we had to get across the Armenian border and the Georgian border, pick up a car that we'd stashed at a gas station with a guy. All kinds of things had to happen, and we had a curfew. Like, we absolutely had to be back on our base by a certain time, or terrible, terrible things would happen and we'd get in trouble. So we said to our driver guy, who spoke no English, we said, okay, we have to go, you know, point at the watch, time to go. And I know the word for the shared taxis was marshrutka, and we kept riding in marshrutka. So I said, we have to go to the marshrutka. And the driver said, and started driving. And I thought, fantastic. But then he started driving further up the mountain. And this is one of the first points where my little cup of adventure and happiness, some of that flew out a little bit because I was like, why are we going up the mountain? And a little bit of fear got into my cup. And then I stopped him again. I said, no, we have to go down. We have to go back home to marshrutka. And he goes, and he kept driving further. And just a little more adventure and excitement went out of my cup, and a little more fear sank in. Then he pulled us to the edge of a cliff. At this point, the entire cup of adventure just poured out all over the ground, and there was nothing but fear in there. And on the edge of a cliff, he locked the doors, and he turned around. He was in the front seat. Walter and I were in the back. And he turned around and made the international sign for pay me. And I thought, oh, okay, sure. So I reached into my wallet, and I got all the Armenian currency I had, which was like $50 worth. And I gave it to him, and I thought, there we go, he's paid. And a little more stability went back into my cup, because I was like, okay, this was just a misunderstanding. He just wants money. It's fine. Out of their fear. Out of their fear. And then, it was time for tea. And then that wasn't enough. He leaned back, and he angrily gestured for more. And I said, no, I've already paid you. That's it. He got more and more angry. He started to yell at us. Walter and I freaked out. All of the excitement was out of the cup. It was nothing but fear at this point. He was yelling, and I thought, well, we have to yell back. So I did. I just started yelling. I said, you drive us down right now. I will not have this. Blah, blah, blah. And Walter had an idea, and he said, why don't we just get out of the car? This man is crazy. I said, Walter, if we get out of the car and he drives away, we'll be stuck on a mountain in Armenia, a country we may have slightly bribed our way into from Georgia, a country that we came into from Turkey, where we hit a car because we live on a military base. We absolutely can't get out of this car. And so we panicked. And so we yelled, and he yelled, and I sounded repetitive. So I eventually realized he doesn't speak English. Doesn't matter what I yell, as long as it sounds angry. So I just started yelling angry nonsense at him. Said tugboats and rose gardens and lollipops. whatever it was, in an angry tone. And then he reached back and tried to grab my wallet. That was enough of that. And then I pulled my wallet back, and then he tried to punch me. But we were in a car, so all I had to do was lean back, really. And then the ultimate thing happened. All of the fear in my cup switched out to survival instinct, and I thought, all right, we've got to get out of this. And so I said, Walter, give me the pen. Walter said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to defend us with a pen. Walter said, what, like you're going to write him a story? I said, give me the pen. And so I took the pen, and I menacingly jabbed it at the guy. It was really dumb because this was the most stupid kidnapping ever. We were just in a car, but we really couldn't leave. We were trapped. And so trying to flail at him with a pen, all he had to do was lean forward. And so in the end, all I really did is scribble on the guy. But it was enough scribbling, and I think I, messed up his clothes enough that he finally was like, blah, 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 and he started the car. Walter had gotten down in the fetal position at this point. He was not thrilled that I was menacing a man with a pen. So when the car engine started, he popped back up. And he's like, oh, did you stab him? And I was like, no, I scribbled on him. At most, I scribbled on him. This deserves a laugh because my entire stupid kidnapping basically came down to me scribbling. If you're going to get kidnapped, always bring a pen, is the moral of the story. And he did. He started the car. We started to drive back down. And I began to feel some sense of control again. And we finally got to a part of the town hours later where I knew that we were okay. And we leapt out of the car. The whole way down was uncomfortable because he kept looking back like he was going to do something. So I held the pen at his neck, which I wasn't really going to do anything. The problem is I wasn't sure if I had to keep the pen there the whole time. Like, does he understand that I'm dangerous? And so I did. I kept the pen the whole time, which means every time we went over a bump, I scribbled on him a little bit more. This poor guy had a lot of scribbling on. But that's what happens if you kidnap people. You get scribbled. Kidnappers get scribbled. That's quotable. We're going with that. Anyway, all through this story, I can think of so many times where my cup was full of something and then had to switch out. A lot of it felt like adventure, and that was great, and then adventure flew out. And fear just jumps in so very quickly. This is a natural reaction, and sometimes we have to fill it with other things. Sometimes survival instinct kicks in, and you think, I've got to do something about this. The truth in life is that we're really, really good as humans when we have just the right amount of adversity. If we have too little or too much, things go badly. But in all honesty, just the right amount of adversity causes a ton of creativity. If you're never ever challenged, you don't really have much opportunity to grow. If you're challenged way too much, then your growth is stunted. And so some of dealing with fear is being able to put it into the right perspective, being able to move things to just the right amount of adversity. And that means dealing with fear. We read it in scripture so often, backup for this, that it's usually through strife and some kind of difficulty that some of the major characters in the Bible did their biggest growth. We have examples like Joseph, Jonah, Abraham, Moses, Esther, Paul, John, and so many others where we see some adversity, where we see a little bit of fear that actually encourage them to take that fear out and put instead in faith, to put instead in bravery, to put instead in things that are far more beneficial than the void-filling fear. So does this mean that we're never going to experience any pain or suffering? Does this mean that if we get rid of fear and put in trust in God, that everything will just magically work out? I do think it means everything will work out. I don't think it means that we get to experience a life without pain. And part of that, honestly, is because of what I said, because we need a little bit of adversity in order for our best selves to come out, in order to encourage us to be creative. I honestly think God loves us enough that sometimes he allows some pain because that will actually get rid of the things in our cup that we don't want to be there. And the challenge then is not to let fear take hold, but to put in far more healthy things. Deuteronomy 31:8 says, "He will never leave nor forsake you. Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged." I feel like this is kind of an example with little kids. Little kids, when they're scared, if they're scared of a monster under their bed or something like that, they scream and yell for their parents. When their parents come in, they feel everything is fine. There's not they don't understand everything. I think I've watched little kids fall and skin their knees, and they scream like their legs have been ripped off. It hasn't. And in fact, they're going to experience far greater pain in life. But good parents know that you still have to comfort the child, that even though it's not life-threatening, it is painful. I think that's how God looks at us a lot of the times. A lot of the things that we face are actually not near as big a deal in the grand scheme of eternity. But that doesn't mean they aren't a big deal in the moment. And the great thing is we have a loving God who cares about us even in the moment, who knows that we're going to experience pain, who doesn't want us to allow fear to fill in that cup. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I'm going to leave you today with a story from the Bible that I think sums this up really well. Someone who did way better than me in a kidnapping, but someone who also, as with my kidnapping, as I'm sure you can relate to in your life, had the cup of adventure constantly being emptied out and had opportunities to fill it with all kinds of other things. So I'm going to tell you the story of Esther, and it's an entire book of the Bible, and I encourage you to go and have a look because it's very interesting. But I want to give you a synopsis, and I want the same thing, to look at times where those cups full of being were emptied out, where stability and control left, and what happened to fill it. So, for background, this happened during the time of the Persian Empire, and there was a king, Ahasuerus, also called Xerxes. We're going to go with Xerxes because that's just way more fun to say. So King Xerxes was a little bit of a crazy king of the Persian Empire, and he had a super sassy wife. And this super sassy wife, one time at a party, he was like, "Come down, beautiful wife, and show everyone how beautiful you are." And she was like, "I don't want to. My hands are literally in my sleeve right now. I'm literally trying to can, but I can't." And he was like, "Oh, too sassy." So he divorced her. This is going to be the most odd interpretation ever, so go ahead and read the real thing. But this is basically what happened. So he did. He divorced sassy wife, and then he was like, "Oh, I need a new one." And so he held a beauty pageant, because that's a good way to find a wife. So he did. Throughout the entire nation, throughout all the Persian Empire, especially in his city and everything, he's like, beauty pageant, find me the most beautiful woman. And the woman who won was actually a woman named Esther. Now, Esther was a Jew. And at the time, being Jewish in the Persian Empire was not really a good thing. They were kind of looked down on. They were a conquered people. And so Esther was being raised by her cousin Mordecai because her parents had both passed away. So her cousin Mordecai, when she won this beauty pageant and was wed to the king, said, "Listen, keep the fact that you're Jewish on the DL." And she was wise, and she did. So just imagine for a second Esther at this point. First of all, she's going through life. They're in kind of a hostile environment, so her cup's probably already a little bit empty and filled with fear. Then all of a sudden, she wins a beauty pageant, which sounds like a great thing, but is actually pretty terrifying to be married to a king who's kind of crazy. He divorced his previous wife for being sassy and decided to replace her with a beauty pageant. Not a lot of stability going on there. And so she's got plenty of reason for her cup to be filled with all kinds of fear. And if I were in similar shoes, I think I would be fearful too. So the story continues on, and she's now queen. And Mordecai, her cousin, one day overhears a couple of guards who say, "We're going to assassinate the king." So Mordecai says, "Oh my gosh, well that's bad." So he tells Esther, his cousin, he says, "Listen, I heard some guards. They're going to try to, assassinate the king. You should tell him he's your husband." So Esther does. She's like, "Listen, honey, your majesty, darling, sweetie, people are trying to kill you." And so they managed to, uncover the plot, and they're safe. And so the king is really grateful. He's like, "Esther, thank goodness you helped save my life." And Mordecai too, so that's good. Then another character enters, and this character was a high-ranking official in the king's court, and his name was Haman. And Haman was a bit of a jerk, really. Haman was pretty full of himself, and Haman's like, "I'm pretty amazing. Everyone should bow to me." And Mordecai wouldn't. Mordecai was like, "My faith says I should only bow to God, so no." And then Haman loses his mind. He's so egotistical that Haman is so offended that Mordecai won't bow to him that he says, "That's it, Mordecai. You're going to be executed. And not just you, because I'm a crazy person. I'm so full of myself. I, Haman, am so full of myself. Because you embarrassed me, I'm actually not just going to murder you. I'm going to wipe out your entire people." And so he does. Haman decides that he is going to wipe out all of the Jews in the Persian Empire. Imagine being Esther or Mordecai or anyone. I bet at that moment, what little tiny bit of stability they thought they had went boom, right out the window. That is a terrifying place to be. And so what do they fill it with? Well, they definitely filled it with a bit of fear. And so Mordecai goes to Esther and says, "Listen, they are going to eradicate all of us, our entire family. They're going to eradicate our entire people, our entire nation." And so he goes to Esther, and Esther is terrified. Her cup at that point is filled with fear. That makes a ton of sense. If your entire people were going to be wiped out, you'd be pretty fearful. But she decides to move on, and so she says, "You know what? I'm really scared to go to the king with this, because what if she went to the king and said, well, I'm Jewish, and he said, well, sorry, you've got to be executed then, because Haman's my boy and he says you all have to go. That would be a horrifying place to be. So she's nervous, but she removes that fear, and she says basically to Mordecai, she says, I'm going to fast for 3 days. I'm going to not eat any food. I'm going to pray to God for 3 days. And I want everyone else, all the Jewish people, to do this too. She took the fear out and instead replaced it with a focus on God. Fasting is one of the ways that we focus. People fast so that when you feel hungry, it reminds you of something. So Christians fast as a way of focusing on God, so that when you feel twitches of hunger, you go, oh yeah, pray to God. It's like building in little alarm clocks for yourself. So she takes out the fear and she puts in a reliance on God. And so she fasts for 3 days and has all of the Jewish people fast as well. Now, during those 3 days, she finally decides to go to the king, and she says, Your Majesty, honey, sweetie, darling, I have a request, but let's have a big banquet, and I'll tell you about it. And the king says, fantastic, I love a good party. And so they get this banquet ready, and they invite everyone. It's going to be lavish. Haman is going to be there, the egotistical maniac, because he's part of the king's court. And Esther knows this. And this would be another time to be filled with fear. Imagine having to tell your husband, hey, please don't execute my whole people because that guy said so. And they're all in the same room. That would be mortifying. But Esther is brave, and she's taken out the fear, and she's replaced it with a reliance on God. She fasted for 3 days and says, all right, king, I have a request. Let's have a big party. Incidentally, the night before, the king is going back over basically the newspapers of the time and looking at what's happened during his reign. And he remembers, oh yeah, remember that time that people plotted to kill me and someone saved me? Mordecai saved me. That's fantastic. You know what? He should be rewarded. How have I not rewarded that guy yet? So he calls in his advisor, Haman, the crazy egotistical guy. He calls him in and he says, hey, Haman, listen, what would you do for someone who you think is just astounding and amazing, and how would you reward them? Now, Haman is egotistical. Remember, he wanted to kill an entire group of people because someone wouldn't bow to him. So Haman hears this and thinks, the king's talking about me. And so when the king's like, what do I do to reward someone who's been great? And Haman goes, well, you should give them lots of honors and riches. Yes, give them riches. That would be good. And so the king says, fantastic, that's what I'll do. King, of course, was planning this for Mordecai because he remembered he saved him. Mordecai, Esther's cousin, not Haman, but Haman thinks it's for him. So everything comes to a head. They're all there at this great big banquet, and the king says to Esther, he goes, whatever you want, I will give it to you. And so Esther, in bravery, she's taken the fear out of the cup, she's put in reliance on God, she's put in bravery, and she basically spills it all to him. And she says, look, I don't want you to okay the execution of my entire people. In fact, Haman, he's doing this because he's a bad guy. He's an egotistical maniac, and he basically just wants to kill us all off because then, he can plunder all of our stuff. And Mordecai, he's Jewish too. So are you really going to kill the very guy who saved your life? And the king was so moved that everything switched around. He got enraged at Haman, and he said, you egotistical maniac, you're going to be the one who's executed. And so the Jewish people were saved. Haman ended up being executed, and all of his belongings, all of his estate and everything were given to Mordecai. The story is an amazing one because it basically is the story of one of the times that an entire nation of people were saved, and they were saved because of a faithful woman. Imagine if she had just let fear settle in. There were so many times in that story where she very well just could have given in to fear. She could have been so afraid when she won the beauty pageant and was going to be married to a king who might not like her race. She could have just run away. She could have let fear dictate that. When everything was going wrong and they were going to execute the entire people, instead of being brave and fasting and relying on God, she very well could have gone and again tried to escape, run off, or done anything like that, but she didn't. She didn't let fear take over. And I think that there's so much of that we can learn. I think the moments in my life where I have been brave enough to replace fear with faith in God are times that I've seen things so much more clearly. And maybe that's one of the best things we can hope for when we're afraid, is to be able to see more clearly. Fear is something that leaps in to fill a void. When control and trust are emptied out, the void is usually filled by fear if we're not careful. I think that we have opportunities to fill it with something better, to fill it with faith. And I think that through faith, we get to see more clearly. That dispels fear even more when you can see the long picture, when you can see what's going on. Isaiah 41:10 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." God will never leave you. I think we get a lot of comfort from the realization that God has a plan for us, that God knows what's going on, and that in all honesty, even the most horrific things in our life are still under his control. That even when we feel out of control, God says, "I promise this will not last forever. I promise the pain you're feeling is not infinite. I promise there are better things to come." It isn't always in ways that we understand. It doesn't mean that we're not going to deal with sadness and loss. We are. But it means that those things form part of a bigger plan. It means that ultimately God knows how the story ends. And even if we have a rough chapter in the middle, we still know there's a good ending. I want to leave you with one final quote, again from Brennan Manning. And it's a quote that I love because it sums up, I think, what our response to fear should be. And this is Brennan Manning, and he's quoting basically what Jesus says to us. And it says, "Be still, all is well. I am here. Do not be afraid. The world is no longer in the hands of the evil one, but in the arms of a loving shepherd. In the end, everything will be all right. Nothing can harm you permanently. No suffering is irrevocable. No loss is lasting. No defeat is more than transitory. No disappointment is conclusive. Nothing can ever separate us. Not troubles, worries, persecutions, not lack of food or clothes, not attacks or invasions. There is absolutely nothing in life or death that will ever come between you and the love of God made visible in Jesus." No matter what is going on, no matter how uncertain times are, the truth and the constant is that God will never leave or forsake you. He loves you. He wants what's best for you. And no pain is permanent. There will be pain, but it won't last forever. No loss is anything you can't recover from. It's going to hurt in the short term, but God knows a long-term plan. God made you as an eternal soul, and what happens in the here and now is really just a tiny glimmer. Even things that seem absolutely horrifying to us in the grand scheme of eternity are kind of like skinned knees. That doesn't mean that we don't need comfort in the here and now. We absolutely do. But it means that we can take those things and realize that they're part of a much bigger plan, a plan that has so much more good than bad, a plan where everything will work out because God knows the ending. I know it's fearful times. I know that a lot of us have had our cup rocked and a load of tea has fallen out. A load of certainty, a load of things that we thought we could depend on all fell out. My encouragement to you is not to let fear be the thing that fills the void. Let faith be the thing that fills the void. Sometimes it's actually for our own good that we get stuff knocked out of the cup because it's an opportunity to fill it with something better, something more constant, something more lasting. So, there we go. I love the story of Esther. I'm really glad that we got to talk about that. I also love that I was kidnapped a little bit. It's not quite as exciting as what Esther went through, but I got to scribble on a guy with a pen, and that's fun. So, advice for today. Don't let fear fill the void. Trust in God because he has much bigger plans. And always bring a pen because you never know when you might have to scribble on a guy. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been such an incredible joy having you here streaming with me again. We haven't had near enough laughter, so I'm just going to have a laugh track go for a little while now just to amuse myself. That was good times. Oh gosh, that one at the end always gets me. All right, my dear friends, it has been a load of fun. Thank you so much for joining me. We will be back yet again next week at the same time and the same place. So please do come again. And thank you so much for the comments, for the waves, for the hearts, for the everything. I love it. I hope you have a fantastic evening if you're in Europe or the Middle East. A fantastic day if you're in the US. And a fantastic middle of the night if you happen to be even further afield. So look forward to seeing you again soon. Be careful out there, everybody. Thanks for playing. Okay, bye-bye now. Okay, bye.